Lives have been saved if evacuation orders.
The rain hammered against the roof, each drop a tiny drumbeat in the symphony of the storm. It was as if nature itself was playing a relentless, chaotic melody, one that echoed through the walls of my home. Nestled in my home in the heart of North Carolina, miles from the coast, I watched as the wind whipped the trees outside my window into a frenzy. The branches bent and swayed, almost as if they were dancing to the storm's wild rhythm, a dance that seemed both beautiful and terrifying. Hurricane Helene, they said, was a coastal threat. The news anchors spoke with urgency, their voices filled with concern as they warned those on the coast to evacuate and prepare for the worst. Yet here it was, miles inland, unleashing its fury on my small town. The storm did not discriminate. It tore through our community with the same ferocity it had shown the coastal areas. The power flickered, plunging my living room into darkness. The sudden loss of light was jarring, a stark reminder of how vulnerable we were in the face of nature's wrath. Fear, cold and sharp, gripped my heart. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach, a gnawing anxiety that refused to be ignored. This was not how it was supposed to be. Hurricanes were supposed to be a distant threat, something that happened to other people in other places. I had always thought of hurricanes as a coastal problem. The images of people evacuating, boarding up their homes, and fleeing to safety were scenes from a different world. Living in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, I felt insulated from the wrath of the Atlantic Ocean. The mountains had always seemed like a protective barrier, shielding us from the worst of the weather. I had seen news reports, of course, the devastating images of flooded streets and battered houses, but those were always far away, a world apart from my quiet life. The destruction seemed almost surreal, like something out of a nightmare. Helene, however, had other plans. The storm's path was unpredictable, and it had veered inland with a vengeance, catching many of us off guard. As the night deepened and the storm raged on, I realized with growing terror that Hurricane Helene was not just a coastal storm. It was a force of nature that could reach far beyond the shoreline, bringing its destruction to places that had never before been touched by such fury. It was a harbinger of a new era, one where the mountains themselves could become Hurricane Alley. The thought was both sobering and terrifying, a reminder that no place was truly safe from the power of nature. The roar of rushing water jolted me from my thoughts. It was a sound that filled me with dread, a reminder of the storm's relentless power. It was coming from my backyard, the creek that usually flowed peacefully now a raging torrent. The water was rising quickly, turning my once tranquil yard into a scene of chaos. Fear propelled me to my feet, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, urging me to act. I rushed to the back door, flinging it open to a scene of utter chaos. The water was everywhere, a churning, muddy mess that threatened to engulf everything in its path. The water, brown and swirling, was rising rapidly, swallowing my yard inch by agonizing inch. It was a sight that filled me with a sense of helplessness, a realization that there was little I could do to stop the flood. In that moment, as the storm raged around me and the water crept closer, I understood. The power of nature was something that could not be tamed or controlled. Hurricanes were no longer just a coastal concern. They were a threat to anyone in their path, no matter how far inland. The storm had shown me that we were all vulnerable, no matter where we lived. They were a threat to anyone in their path, no matter how far inland. The storm had shown me that we were all vulnerable, no matter where we lived. The devastation was a stark reminder of the power of nature and the need to be prepared for the unexpected.
Hurricane Helene, a Category 1 hurricane that made landfall on the Carolina coast, will be remembered not for its wind speed, but for its reach. This storm, though not the most powerful in terms of wind, had an extensive impact that stretched far beyond the coastline. While coastal communities battened down the hatches, bracing for the impact, few expected the storm to penetrate so deep inland. Helene, however, defied expectations. The preparations along the coast were meticulous, with residents boarding up windows and sandbagging, but the storm's true power was yet to be revealed. Its remnants, heavy with moisture picked up from the warm Atlantic waters, swept across the state, bringing torrential rains and flash floods to the unsuspecting mountain communities. These areas, nestled in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, were unprepared for the deluge that followed. The rugged terrain of the Appalachian Mountains, typically a shield against coastal storms, became a conduit for Helene's fury. The mountains, which usually act as a barrier, channeled the storm's energy in unexpected ways. Steep slopes funneled the torrential rainfall into narrow valleys, transforming babbling brooks into raging rivers in a matter of hours. The water, unable to spread out, intensified as it rushed downhill, creating powerful currents. The ground, already saturated from previous days of rain, couldn't absorb the deluge. The soil, heavy with moisture, quickly became waterlogged, leading to widespread flooding. Water cascaded down mountainsides, carrying with it mud, trees, and debris, turning picturesque landscapes into scenes of devastation. The force of the water uprooted trees and swept away anything in its path. The storm exposed a dangerous vulnerability, a lack of preparedness for hurricane-force impacts in a region more accustomed to dealing with snowstorms and the occasional summer thunderstorm. The infrastructure, built to withstand different types of weather, crumbled under the pressure of the unexpected hurricane. While coastal communities have hurricane preparedness ingrained in their DNA, inland areas, often lulled into a false sense of security by their distance from the coast, were caught off guard. The inland residents, used to milder weather patterns, found themselves facing a crisis they had never anticipated. Helene's inland rampage served as a stark reminder that the lines between coast and inland are blurring when it comes to the impact of hurricanes in a changing climate. As climate change continues to alter weather patterns, the reach of such storms is expanding, making it clear that no area is truly safe from their effects.
In the aftermath of Helene, questions arose about the adequacy of the warnings issued to the public, and the decision not to issue evacuation orders for inland communities, which left many residents feeling unprepared and vulnerable. Some argued that the storm's rapid intensification and unpredictable path made it difficult to issue timely and targeted evacuation orders. The meteorologists faced a daunting task, as the storm's behavior defied many of their models and predictions. Others pointed to the challenges of evacuating mountainous areas, where limited road access and rugged terrain can make it a logistical nightmare. The narrow, winding roads and the potential for landslides added to the complexity of the situation. However, the human cost of the storm, the lives lost and the widespread property damage fueled the debate about whether enough was done to warn inland residents of the potential danger. The emotional toll on the affected communities was immense, with many questioning the decisions made by authorities. Could lives have been saved if evacuation orders had been issued sooner? This question haunts the survivors and the families of those who perished. Could the damage have been mitigated if residents had more time to prepare? The lack of preparation time left many scrambling to protect their homes and belongings at the last minute. These questions remain a point of contention, a stark reminder of the complex challenges of predicting and preparing for the inland impacts of hurricanes. The unpredictability of such storms makes it difficult to devise a one-size-fits-all approach to evacuation and preparation. The lack of evacuation orders also highlighted a dangerous misconception that hurricanes are primarily a threat to coastal areas. This false sense of security can have devastating consequences for inland communities. This belief, deeply ingrained in the minds of many inland residents, likely led to complacency and a reluctance to take the warnings seriously. The need for better education and awareness about the risks posed by hurricanes to inland areas is evident. Helene shattered this illusion, demonstrating with brutal clarity that the dangers of hurricanes extend far beyond the coastline. The storm's impact on inland areas was a wake-up call for many. The storm served as a wake-up call, a stark reminder that in the face of a changing climate and increasingly unpredictable weather patterns, no one is immune from the threat. The need for comprehensive disaster preparedness plans that include inland areas has never been more urgent.
Section 4. Shifting Perceptions. Inland Hurricanes, a Growing Threat. Hurricane Helene served as a stark reminder that the impact of hurricanes is no longer confined to coastal areas. The storm's inland fury challenged long-held perceptions about hurricane risks, forcing a reassessment of vulnerability and preparedness strategies. No longer can inland communities afford to view hurricanes as a distant threat, a problem for those who live on the coast. The increasing frequency and intensity of hurricanes, fueled by a warming climate, means that inland areas will likely face more frequent and severe impacts from these storms in the future. This requires a fundamental shift in mindset, a recognition that hurricanes are no longer just a coastal concern, but a threat that knows no boundaries. The traditional focus on coastal preparedness, while essential, is no longer sufficient. Inland communities need to develop their own tailored preparedness plans, taking into account the unique challenges posed by their geography and infrastructure. This includes investing in early warning systems, strengthening infrastructure to withstand extreme weather events, and educating residents about the risks and how to prepare for them. The era of viewing hurricanes as solely a coastal threat is over.
Section 5. The Invisible Killer. Statistics paint a grim picture. The true danger of inland hurricanes often lies not in the wind, but in the water. Statistics paint a grim picture. Over half of all hurricane-related fatalities occur inland, primarily due to flooding. This silent killer, often underestimated and overlooked, can transform babbling brooks into raging torrents, turning familiar landscapes into treacherous waterways in a matter of hours. In the case of Hurricane Helene, flooding was the deadliest and most destructive force. The storm dumped record amounts of rain on the mountains, overwhelming rivers and streams, and causing widespread flash flooding. Homes were ripped from their foundations, businesses were inundated, and lives were lost. The images of flooded neighborhoods, cars submerged in swirling brown water, and families seeking refuge on rooftops served as a stark reminder of the often underestimated dangers of inland flooding. The increasing frequency and intensity of heavy rainfall events linked to climate change exacerbates the risk of inland flooding from hurricanes. Warmer air holds more moisture, leading to heavier downpours and increasing the likelihood of flash flooding. As the climate continues to warm, these trends are projected to worsen, posing an even greater threat to inland communities. The invisible killer, once a rare occurrence, is becoming a more frequent and deadly threat.